Just gotta get my computer to come back to life. Okay, Paul, what's up?
Okay, thank you. We're done with our executive session. There was no action taken, legal advice given. There was a lot of discussion. We're going to move on with our agenda. Next on our agenda is the consent agenda, which we consider to be routine items. They're marked on your agenda with an asterisk. We are going to enact those with one motion without discussion unless someone has any items on that agenda that they would like voted on separately. Does anyone have anything on that? Okay, hearing none, can I have a motion to approve, Mr. Chair? Motion made by Mr. Saviano, second by Mrs. McBride. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The consent agenda is approved. Can I have a motion to seal the May 22nd executive session minutes?
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
I move that we seal the executive session minutes of May 22nd, 2017.
Second.
Motion made by Mrs. McBride, second by Mr. Bento. All in favor?
Aye.
The motion is approved. The minutes are sealed. Moving on to, all right, there's nothing to highlight in the personnel recommendations, correct? There's nothing to highlight there. Okay. Moving on to recommendation 2017-44.
Mr. Chairman, recommendation S 2017-44, that the school committee, upon a recommendation of the superintendent and supported by the policy curriculum subcommittee, approve the first reading of the food service account policy.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chair.
Motion made by Mr. Saviano, second by Mr. Bento. Any discussion?
Yes,
Yes, Mrs. McBride.
a lot of us attended that meeting that night, and we were of two minds. So I'd like to make a motion to amend the policy as read. And I have copies for all of you to see the amended version, which I will pass out, and then we'll talk about it.
Can you pass one down so that way so the administration can please? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Give me 7 so I can go to Karen. Got enough?
Yes.
And if you would, when you get to you, if you give one to Karen, please.
We had quite a discussion about the purpose of the food service account policy, and some of us agreed and some of us didn't, so that's why I'm making this amendment. And actually, would you like a copy since you're here to look at it?
All right, so
It's an extra hand time.
Thank you. So why don't we just go through it? My changes are in gray. So you notice on the first one, under purpose and policy, I took out the first sentence, and then I took out the sentence to establish procedures whereby all students are treated with dignity. It's not that I don't want students to be treated with dignity, but this policy is mandated by the federal government on how we collect money. It doesn't have anything to do with the kind of food we serve or any of the rest of it. It's just how are we going to collect the money for the meals that we serve. So I asked that those two be taken out. Then when you go to page 2, I asked that a meal charge criteria that only reimbursable breakfast, lunches, and milk are available as a charge. Students with a negative balance in their food service meal account shall be allowed to continue to order lunch from the menu options for that day, but are not allowed to charge any a la carte or extra items. Any student with a negative balance that exceeds $20 shall receive an alternative lunch, which is also a healthy lunch, that meets or exceeds the established nutritional guidelines for lunch. Additionally, they shall not be allowed to obtain any a la carte items. Then under B, I added negative balances to notification and resolution. And you'll also note under number 1, I said that the charge notice will go home immediately after the first allowed negative charge, period. In number 2, if the charge has not been paid within 5 business days, the business office will call the parent or the guardian, period. If the charges remain unpaid after the placement of the telephone call, the business office will send a letter demanding payment along with free and reduced meals, explanation, etc. If they continue to carry a balance or do not provide lunch money and do not qualify for free or reduced meal benefits, the principal, the business administrator will determine the method of debt collection. And that's it. And that's my amended policy.
I'm assuming that's in the form of a motion, Mrs. McBride?
Yes, it is.
Is there a second to her motion to amend?
Second, that, Mr. Chair.
Motion made by Mrs. McBride, seconded by Mr. O'Dowd. Discussion? I mean, I know Margie went on to give an explanation. Anybody have any questions on her changes? Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just so that I'm clear, under 3A, where we talk to the alternative lunch, I know we've discussed this many, many times in subcommittee. So if, I'm going to give a for instance, if, for instance, the primary lunch for the day is General Tso's chicken, and the first alternate meal is chicken patty sandwich, and the second alternate meal is sun butter sandwich, that the General Tso's chicken is not available to the child who's carrying a $20 balance or more.
That's correct, and that's what we do now. What all this policy is doing is reflecting what we have been doing in the past. It's working very well. We have very few problems with it, but we have to have it as a policy in our policy book per federal guidelines. So I'm just writing what we do.
Thank you. Well, Marge, I'm just going to, because you made a comment and I'll disagree slightly. What we do now is we do that after $5. You made this 20.
That's correct. Sorry about that.
Am I right, Pauline?
2 meals.
2 meals.
We made this at $20, at $3 a meal. That's 6 meals.
Possibly 7.
It's a week.
Brian, any more?
So the meeting, if it's okay, that Marge is referring to, that we discussed this food services account policy at, was the last policy subcommittee meeting. I am chair of that committee. So just to give you a little background, this, as Marge said, is a policy that is required now and that's because we participate in the National School Lunch Program. So that's a program which provides free or low-cost lunches to children in the district every day. So because we participate in that, we are now required to have this policy. So as Marge said, we have obviously been following a set of procedures to date, and now we're putting in writing what we want those procedures to look like. Our subcommittee worked on this policy, and our aim was to change the procedures so that no child would receive a menu alternate lunch. Even though they are nutritional, we wanted them to have the same lunch that the other students get, because one of the arguments that I make constantly is that it is not the students who should receive the consequence for the unpaid meals when it is their parent or guardian who is not paying the bill. So in this new policy, not the amended version that we are now talking about, but in the policy that we've been working on that was before the committee, it is before the committee, but before this amendment was brought to the table, It takes out that menu alternate lunch option. It does say that students cannot order a la carte items at a certain point. Those are the basic changes, and that, there is a procedure for debt collection, calls, et cetera, and debt collection, but that there will not be menu alternate lunches. I also would like to say about that amendment that there's a very specific reason that we put in to establish that one of the goals of the policy is to establish procedures whereby all students are treated with dignity in the serving line, regardless of the status of their meal accounts. I think that's an incredibly important part. I think it's something that people who need to follow this policy in the schools just need to be aware of. So I would not be in favor of these amendments.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really want to thank everyone for their input with this. This has gone through quite a few rewrites. Policy writing is never easy. But what I received here this evening, I love this. I really do. We're mandated by the federal government to do this. That's really the only reason it's here, because we're mandated to have a policy. And it does what it's supposed to do. It's a bill collection policy. Bill collection policies are supposed to run to the point, and they'll scare you. Let's face it. It's disheartening to me that to have parents or guardians who are not fulfilling their obligation to provide food money for their children. Things happen, and it's right in here. If something's happening, hey, we'll contact you, and we'll have a conversation about it. But if you're just kind of not getting it done, guess what? You need to get it done. And this policy says you need to get it done. If you're not getting it done, we're going to make sure you get it done. And it says it very plainly, and I'm very pleased with the amendment, and I'm going to support it 100%. Thank you.
Any other questions on the amendment? John, you're looking at you.
Yeah. What I'd like to do is pose it to the members of the subcommittee for policy in your discussion. As far as the collection of money, I get your point as far as the goal with dignity, all makes sense. But could you state or restate the purpose or the procedure in collecting money as you see fit? And that's to any member on that subcommittee. I thought Erin was pretty articulate, but if you don't mind, either Erin or the other two members, could you just, because I'm here on one side with what Marge is proposing, I just want to hear the other side real quick.
So it's, is it okay for me to speak on this? So on page 2, it's under 3B, talks about notification and resolution for unpaid charges. They're listed there. Do you want me to read those off, or?
No, you did.
So the intent was to put the consequences on the parties who are not paying the bills, rather than on the student who is standing in line wanting to have lunch.
John, I don't know, but I think, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the policy that was passed out by March, the blue, the last changes, the policy subcommittee made, correct? All right, I don't know if that's something that...
Sorry.
So if you have this, the blue is what the policy subcommittee had changed from the last time it was in front of them, and the red are the changes that March is proposing.
Close, John, I would say that no child doesn't get a meal. So no child is without food.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Well, I just wanted to finish that question with John. So John, that section is pretty much still there. In the amendment, it's modified a little bit. The real change and the real sticking point we had at the subcommittee level, at which there were several other school committee members in attendance, was that there are some of us who want the menu alternate lunch in there. And there are some of us who don't want that in there. So that's the sticking point right there. Do we want children standing in line and not being able to get the lunch that they want? Though, of course, they will get a nutritious lunch.
Sure.
Who's paying the price for this?
Right.
Is the question.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Brian.
Yeah, John, I agree with what Aaron said. I don't have a problem necessarily with 3B and the changes that were made there with the notification and resolution for unpaid charges, negative balances, like Aaron said. The sticking point, I think, with some of the members in the subcommittee and some of the members of the committee as a whole was with the menu alternate lunch, albeit that it's fully nutritional, that, like Aaron said, it's not necessarily what the child desires. So as far as the amendment goes, I don't have a problem with the changes that were made in B. I'm not in favor of the changes that were made to 1 or the changes that were made to 3A. But when it comes to the debt collection and the notification and resolution of Vermont, I'm okay with what's been put there, just not that.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, and everybody's addressing you, John, so I'll address you also. So, John, I want to be consistent. So, John, what that means is, so the child goes up on the margin circumstance and the child gets an alternative lunch. But then when the parents pay, they're not paying for an alternative lunch, they're paying for the lunch that some of us would like to have seen that child get. So there's a difference in value for that reason in my eyes. Thank you.
So if the child continues to get whatever lunch he or she wants, and the parent or guardian chooses not to pay, well, at what point, in this policy before her amendment, what is the method of collection then? At what time, at what time is there some form of leverage? Because I think that's what the federal government is asking for, is what are we doing, for a policy to address?
John, if I may, so one of the things that was brought up at the last subcommittee meeting and that we recently saw coming out of the middle school was pay your fines, pay your book dues, or you can't participate in end-of-the-year activities, right? So I don't think it's a school committee policy. I think it maybe is an administration policy. It doesn't come before us, but it's at the administration level. That if you owe money because you lost a library book and you haven't paid that you can't participate in end-of-the-year activities. Now that child, I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong, but they can still check out books, right, out of the library. So they can, even though they've lost one, they owe money to the library, they're still checking out books. But for that, when they're looking to collect for library books, it's an end of the year, whatever the class is doing for the end of the year, whether it's a trip to the aquarium or whatever it is. So it's reasonable to assume that an administration policy could be enacted or amended to include this in that. But at the same time, again, we're going after the wrong people. It still negatively impacts the student for the parent or guardian failure to pay.
One of the reasons why part of 3A is amended is because one of your members said that it would be more embarrassing for a child to bring up a lunch with extras and be told in front of his classmates or her classmates that she couldn't have any extras. So getting a lunch is getting a lunch. And I don't agree with you, John. Lunches, some children order those alternate lunches. Some children like a chicken patty sandwich rather than General Chow's chicken. So I don't think you can say, well, I'm a bad person because I didn't get general chows when 3 other people at the table didn't get it either because they don't like it. So and the meals are nutritional in terms of the federal government guidelines, and a parent doesn't know whether the child got the general chow's chicken or the chicken patty because the child made their choice on the line. So to say that a parent's paying for more than they're getting, I think it's a bit of a stretch.
I don't want to make this go on forever, but maybe you could understand what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that child wanted to have a non-alternate selection. They wanted to have a regular one. And couldn't. But then, when the parents pay, they're paying for the full lunch.
They're paying for a full lunch.
That's correct.
Got a full lunch.
Just one last comment, because Mr. Bento had mentioned about what the federal government is looking for in this. And John, what they're looking for, I did a little webinar on this and have done a lot of research on it. They want to see that districts who are involved and participating in the National Lunch Program are making a good faith effort to collect debt. And one of the reasons this is happening is because there are districts that where this unpaid lunch debt is a significant financial strain. We are not one of them.
Any other questions on the amended, and the motion to amend? Okay, can I have a vote on the motion to amend, just the motion, not the policy, but the amendments that are being proposed by Marge? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Gee, thank you. I'm going to make this comment because I'm going to be this typer. And while I share a lot of what Mr. Odell said, there's been a lot going back and forth, a lot of input into this policy, and things that go forward from it. My biggest problem at that meeting that you had was in the policy, the way it was proposed. I agree with Mr. Bento, there's no leverage to obtain anything. And I failed to see how a child coming with no money or negative money being told, here's a meal, is a punishment. So I agree that most notably, I like the changes in 3B that require immediate notice and more quicker contact with parents. But I don't have an issue